Welcome to Speak, Feed, Lead with Jackie Bailey. It is the 1st of April. Spring is in the air. It's lovely outside, and it makes me so happy. I hope wherever you're listening from, it is a beautiful day there as well. A month ago, I shared with you the introduction and first chapter of my book, Self-Centered Leadership, Becoming Influential, Intentional, and Exceptional. This episode of my podcast will feature Chapter 2. I hope you will enjoy listening to this section of my book. It is all about sacrifice, which is one of those characteristics that I believe exceptional leaders must possess. Let's just get to it. Here it is, Self-Centered Leadership, Becoming Influential, Intentional, and Exceptional, Chapter 2, Sacrifice. Do you ever feel like a goldfish in a bowl, trying to navigate your way through life and stay afloat? Do you ever fear becoming cat bait? A fishbowl environment can be both challenging and inspiring. When we want to be exceptional in that environment, our odyssey of self begins. In the first chapter, you learned that leadership is the use of natural influence to effect change in another person. Exceptional leadership is the use of natural influence combined with actionable intention to inspire others to effect change in the life of someone else. The number one characteristic of an exceptional leader is sacrifice. Your odyssey is about learning to master self, beginning with the mastery of sacrifice. To illustrate what sacrifice means, I will tell you stories of 3 individuals who, by using their natural influence, accomplished exceptional feats. Perhaps you'll recognize yourself, or someone you know who is exceptional, by listening to the 3 stories. These stories do not suggest that you can only attain exceptional traits by doing what these individuals did. The following stories may help you see that by using your influence with intention, it is possible to become exceptional. Nikolai Vavilov. Nikolai Vavilov was a Russian botanist and arguably one of the greatest scientists of the 20th century. By 1941, he had created the largest seed bank in the world. His collection of 400,000 seeds, roots, fruits, and genetic material held the future of Soviet agriculture. Vavilov's seed bank was located in Leningrad, a city that Stalin had encircled the summer of 1941 in hope of starving the people out. Stalin's plan worked. After 2 years of starvation, 1 million lives were lost. For those 2 years, Vavilov and his scientists had been surrounded by edible plants, but they refused to eat them. Containers of rice, peas, corn, and wheat were available to them, but all 9 scientists and many workers chose death by starvation rather than eat the plants and destroy the preservation of these important genes for future generations. Vavilov himself died of starvation as a prisoner of war in 1943. So tragic that a man with a mission to save humanity with food, and did, should die of starvation. Today, Vavilov's bank of genes hosts the largest collection of fruits and berries in the world. Imagine the knowledge, courage, and strength Vavilov possessed to achieve what he did. Imagine the sacrifice. Perhaps the sacrifices of Nikolai Vavilov and the other Russian scientists will come to mind the next time you eat strawberry shortcake or a piece of blueberry pie. Vavilov's sacrifice continues to influence our lives and behaviors. Seed, the Untold Story, a movie that highlights his mission, is scheduled for release in 2015. Rick Rescorla. September 11, 2001 is a day that most Americans remember. Many heroes were born and many heroes died that day. Sacrifices of the fallen were made on behalf of those who lived. The influence of these heroes is still felt around the world. Rick Rescorla was an American hero. His heroic act culminated on September 11, 2001, because of the sacrifices he made prior to that date. His early sacrifices allowed his final influential act to become heroic. Rick Rescorla was a retired, decorated United States Army colonel. It wasn't part of his job description, but he had been concerned about the security vulnerabilities of the garage at the World Trade Center in New York City, even before the first attack on the building in 1993. Rescorla was instructed by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey to focus only on the 22 floors that housed Morgan Stanley in the South Tower of the building. In 1997, he became Director of Security at Morgan Stanley, where he maintained vigilant attention to the safety of the firm and the building. He held twice-yearly evacuation drills by the stairwell. The result of his service? On September 11, 2001, he was prepared to lead many employees to a safe evacuation. Despite having received official instructions to stay put after the first tower was struck by a plane at 8:46 a.m., Rescorla told Morgan Stanley staffers to follow his plan. He sent them 2 by 2, as they had practiced, down the many flights of stairs. His decision and his preparation made all the difference. Although 13 employees, including Rescorla, perished that day, more than 2,500 employees of Morgan Stanley left the tower alive. The word preparedness comes to mind when thinking of Rick Rescorla's sacrifice. So does the word hero. Miki Endo. On March 11, 2011, a devastating tsunami hit East Japan. In the town of Minamisanriku, Miki Endo became a hero. Her words of instruction had a saving influence over thousands of residents. Miki was a staff worker at the Minamisanriku Town Hall. As the tsunami approached, Miki could have saved her own life by running to higher ground. Instead, she used the community loudspeaker to warn and instruct the residents on what to do, saving 10,000 people. Miki's body was never recovered from the devastation. She was 24 years old and had been married less than a year. Miki had much to live for, yet she chose to save thousands of people she didn't even know. Nikolai Vavilov, Rick Rescorla, and Miki Endo had knowledge, courage, and strength. They didn't set out to do anything particularly amazing. They did not know they would be heroes to nations and an everlasting influence to generations. However, it was their personal sacrifice that clearly made them so. I don't share these stories to suggest that leaders must be heroes, nor do I wish to convey that if you do not commit a heroic act, that you're not a leader. All of us are put into positions of leadership at one time or another, and rarely do we have an opportunity to be heroic. I share these stories because sacrifice is key to exceptional leadership. Inspiration and influence of others can come only through self-sacrifice. Quote, "True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the courage to surpass others at whatever cost, but the courage to serve others at whatever the cost." End quote. Arthur Ashe. Exceptional leaders and heroic leaders sacrifice because they care about the success of those they lead, and they recognize the influence they have simply by being who they are. What sacrifices have you made for others? What sacrifices by others have influenced you the most? In his book, Lectures on Faith, Joseph Smith Jr., founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, arguably one of the most influential religions in the modern world, tells us, quote, "A religion that does not require the sacrifice of all things never has power sufficient to produce the faith necessary unto life." End quote. Sacrifice of all things. That's pretty big. This doesn't just apply to religion, though. Religion, like a job or a position of leadership, is something you are accountable to. Have you ever considered your personal accountability? Personal accountability is more important than being accountable to someone else. Sacrifice of all things means that when faced with the choice of your own happiness or the happiness, safety, or life of someone else, you will choose the latter. More simply put, when faced with a choice between your want and the need of another, you will fill the need of your neighbor ahead of your want. However, it is not wise to sacrifice your need for the want of another. Sacrifice is giving up your wants for another's needs. Stupidity is giving up your needs for another's wants. We are rarely asked to sacrifice our lives in the way that Nikolai Vavilov, Rick Rescorla, and Mickey Endo did. However, we sacrifice our lives in the way we spend our time daily. Isn't life merely a matter of time? If life is time, then when we waste time, we are sacrificing greater opportunity and we are wasting our life. Relinquish a want to satisfy a need. You are exceptional and ready to lead. Exchange a need for something of want. You will soon have nothing to flaunt. How do you know when sacrifice is required? There's an app for that. A, actions, P, possessions, P, possibilities. The sacrifice or vice chart that is included in my book provides a way for you to determine whether or not you're making the best choices when it comes to your actions, possessions, and the possibilities that lie before you. By answering the questions on the chart, you can decide what choice is best in any given situation. In order to determine where you are currently and where sacrifice may be needed, honestly fill out this chart, considering that some actions, possessions, and possibilities may begin as wants, but then become needs. Actions. 1. List all the tasks you perform in a day. 2. Who are you accountable to for each task? 3. What is the outcome of accomplishing each task? And 4. Is your action based on a want or a need? Possessions. 1. List the items you want to buy. 2. Why do you want to have each item? 3. Do you have money budgeted to buy each item? And 4. Is buying each item based on a want or a need? Possibilities. 1. List the accomplishments you want to achieve. 2. What does a successful outcome look like? 3. Who or what will support you during the process? And 4. Is it best to begin now or later? Sometimes it's hard to know the right choice to make. When you're looking for answers, it may help to ask yourself the question in 4 different ways. For instance, if the question is, should I buy a new car right now? Ask yourself the following 4 questions and weigh the possible outcome. 1. What is the potential best outcome if I do buy a car right now? 2. What is the potential worst outcome if I do buy a car now? 3.